Chapter 2. Background of the concept of the child within. References to the concept of the child within originate as far back as before the time of Christ, but three recent developments are important to its current concept. First, child abuse and neglect. The first development comes out of two movements. One is the child abuse movement. The other is an offshoot of an interaction of this with certain clinicians and writers in the therapy field. These concepts have evolved over the past 50 years, perhaps coincidentally within the same time frame of the second major movement of the child within. That second major development includes the 12-step self-help recovery movement and the closely aligned alcohol and the family treatment movement. This may surprise people who are not familiar with all three of these areas: child abuse, therapy, and alcoholism recovery. Yet there is a definite interconnection with each making important contributions. Alcoholism recovery. Successful alcoholism recovery began in 1935 with the founding of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. In addition to suffering from the illness of alcoholism, most founders of AA were either adult children of alcoholics or were mistreated or abused as children. Many had unsuccessfully tried various forms of therapy. Unfortunately, even today, outside of the field of alcoholism treatment, individual therapy for alcoholics and their family members early in recovery has not substantially improved. Like therapy, the field of child abuse and neglect is only beginning to discover the vast clinical skills and effectiveness available in the field of alcoholism, other chemical dependence, and codependence. In turn, the alcoholism field is learning more and more from therapy with child abuse and neglect. During its first 20 years, Alcoholics Anonymous grew rapidly and became firmly established as the treatment for alcoholism. Its 12 steps of recovery were a revelation for the heretofore misunderstood and mistreated alcoholic. In the mid-1950s, both the generic family therapy movement and the Fellowship of Al-Anon, which is for the family and friends of alcoholics, came into being. But the children in the alcoholic family were given little attention, especially the child within of all affected. Until the late 1960s, essentially no articles or books seriously addressed concern for children from alcoholic families. The first book, The Forgotten Child, by Margaret Cork, was published in 1969. With that, the literature and attention gradually increased. The family and children. During the late 1970s and early 80s, practical approaches to understanding and helping family members of alcoholics and other chemical dependent people soon emerged. The field has developed so rapidly that today some clinicians and educators are specializing in this area. The founding in 1983 of the National Association for Children of Alcoholics, NACOA, encouraged networking and the dissemination of information. At the same time, the first self-help groups for adult children of alcoholics began to meet. Today, these ACA or ACOA groups are growing so fast that an estimated one new group is started in the USA every day. During these last few decades and years, the concept of the child within reemerged and began to mature, both in the alcoholism family field and in that of therapy. Therapy. The involvement of therapy in the child within concept began with the discovery of the human unconsciousness, followed by Freud's trauma theory. However, Freud quickly discarded the latter for one less clinically effective in healing childhood trauma wounds, the drive or instinct theory, and the Oedipus complex, Freud and Miller. While many of Freud's brightest and most creative students and colleagues, such as Jung, Adler, Rank, and Acciajuoli, disagreed with Freud's latter two theories and made their own valuable contributions to the field of therapy, the concept of the child within, the real or true self, came slowly. Contributions by Erikson, Klein, Horney, Sullivan, Fairbairn, Hartman, Jacobson, and others paved the way for London pediatrician Donald Winnicott to describe his observations of mothers, infants, and children. These included specifics about the real or true self, which is our child within, and which is crucial in our lives and to feeling alive. Drawing from the psychoanalytic therapy literature, especially from Freud and Winnicott, from observations of her patients, and from reading works on child abuse in 1979, Alice Miller began integrating child mistreatment, abuse and neglect, and psychoanalytic therapy in her 3 books. However, only twice does she make the important connection of alcoholism as a major parental condition, predisposing damage to the child within. This, despite the fact that many of her patients and those of her psychoanalytic colleagues were probably children of alcoholics and of codependents. In no way do I fault her, for I believe that she has had the same incomplete education that I and most helping professionals had. Essentially no training in alcoholism and codependence as primary illnesses. In fact, our training has actually been negative about these 2 common clinical conditions. Medical illness. Another contribution to healing the child within came from using group therapy and guided imagery as a treatment aid for cancer patients. Discovery that many cancer patients had neglected their needs, getting their needs met, and expressing their feelings. Matthews, Simonton, and others from 1983 described approaches to remedying these needs. Others in the field of medicine are beginning to use similar approaches in treating heart disease and other life-threatening conditions. From Dossi, Moss, Siegel. I believe that the principles and techniques in healing our child within can have important and useful applications in helping to ameliorate all illness and suffering. Spirituality. The final area that connects those above with the child within is that of spirituality. The alcoholism and alcoholism family fields use this recovery aid effectively. Some therapists and physicians are beginning to recognize its value. Wilbur, Whitfield, Wagschleider, Cruz, Kuntz, Moss, Siegel, Vaughn, Bowden, Gravitz. I refer to spirituality, not organized religion. Throughout this book, especially in chapter 15, as I wrote in Alcoholism and Spirituality, I believe that spirituality is crucial in achieving full recovery from any medical or psychological condition, and especially for discovering and ultimately liberating the child within, our real and true self. Just what is our child within? How do we know it when we see it, feel it, or recognize it? What relevance does it have to recovery from the above-mentioned conditions, as well as from other physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual illnesses?